Spring has finally sprung here in Australia. The past 2 days have been absolutely glorious, so beautiful and sunny. I was gonna film in the office, but my bedroom gets this like beautiful light in the morning, and I thought, why not make use of it whilst we have it? Because who knows, here in Melbourne, in Australia, you never know what's going to happen with the weather. It's very unpredictable. You never know what it's going to do. So here we are in the patch in the sun. I've had a beautiful past few weeks in terms of reading. You know, when you sort of just hit your stride and you just can't get enough. You're insatiable. You want more. You just want to drink all the language up. That's how I've been feeling. I've been reading an awful amount, like an incredible amount, not in an awful way, of course, but just like an awful amount of books. Like I've been just like insatiable. I haven't been able to get enough. I've been reading very compulsively and a lot, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think this is like something I harp on a lot about like trying to reduce my relationship with my phone. And this week in particular, I've had like a few weeks where I've just sort of like fallen off that wagon, but I think yesterday I became like really hyper aware of like, as much as I've reduced my digital like screen time and intake, and it is my job, I still have a long way to go, and I haven't been being completely honest with myself. So hopefully more reading, more writing, more like consuming of more intentional media over the next few weeks. But I want to get on here, and I've been thinking a lot about like books that chic people read, that when someone tells me they've read these books, I think they're very, very hot, very well read, and I instantly want to be their friend. And a lot of like the people I admire here on the internet in my own life read these books, and I just think they're really cool, and I think they're incredible books that everyone should read. And so I want to do a little book recommendation for books you can read if you want to be chic, or books I find incredibly chic. And so I think I've got about 10 recommendations here. So grab your journal, write them down, and acquire them and read them, and let me know what you think. The first book recommendation I want to talk about is Deborah Levy's August Blue. I can't remember if this was actually the first Deborah Levy I ever read, and when I've read it, I don't think it like impacted me, but the more I think about it, the more like it's resonated within my life, and I can appreciate it. I think the beauty of this book is going in blind and sort of like letting it take you on this dream-like journey. This book is so whimsical. Deborah Levy just writes like a dream. Like I felt like this was some sort of fever dream. It follows a pianist, quite a successful pianist, after she has sort of like a breakdown on stage and has to walk away from performing, which has made up her identity for pretty much her entire life. It's a very eerie and reflective and meditative book, in the way that we're sort of like inside this person's mind, and we're learning about like what it means to attach something and identify with something so deeply, and what it means to have that taken away, which I think a lot of people can resonate with. I think that's something that happens in life a lot, but Deborah Levy just has this incredible way of writing. If you've read any of her work before, you would know. And I love the cover. I feel like the cover adds so much. Like walking down the street holding this Chic, it will give you a lot of things to think about, a lot of points for discussion. I know a lot of people don't like this book at all, but I do want to reread it because I remember liking it, not being wrapped with it, but the more I think about it, the more I like it, and I think it's really chic. So maybe you should read it. One thing you're going to see throughout this video is that every single cover is absolutely delicious. There's not an ugly cover in this, and I think that has something to do with why they're chic. But my next recommendation is the Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson, and this is a novel in verse, which is a little bit different. Anne Carson is incredible. I've read quite a few of her works before, and I just keep falling more and more in love with her every year the more I read from her, especially her essays that I read online. But this was the first one I read of her that solid is a theme already. But this is a Greek retelling of the myth of Geryon, the dragon, and it's sort of like a coming of age story, but it's about a dragon, a queer dragon. It's very, very gay, and it's so much fun, but also really challenging in the way it's written. I think it will push you outside of your comfort zone if you're not used to reading in verse. The book again is very dream-like. It's very whimsical, and I really enjoyed that. I remember it being quite a challenge for me. Like it was, especially I read it maybe around 2 years ago, and I really had to concentrate, and it is again a book I really want to reread. And the cover, look at that, like this is so beautiful, and I think just talking about it has made me excited, so I'm gonna read it again, I think soon, hopefully. But yeah, if you're wanting something that's like a little bit different, especially I know people are obsessed with Greek retellings here on the internet, especially like the Song of Achilles and Circe and all these books, but I think this is way more in depth, way more beautiful in the way it uses language, and so for that reason I think it's really, really chic and a book you should try and read. Old Enough for Snow by Jessica Au is my next recommendation. Jessica Au is actually Australian, and this book won the Novel Prize, which is a joint prize between Fitzcarraldo and Giramondo Editions here in Australia, which is probably my favorite publishing house here in Australia. They just publish a lot of really experimental and boundary pushing books, and I love that. And this is, I can understand why this won such an amazing prize. And Jessica is a young writer, which is just even more phenomenal, and I feel so deeply about this book. I want to preface this by saying that I think you need to read this book in one sitting. I read it over maybe 2 or 3, and I think it did do the book a little bit of a disservice, but as you can see, I still underlined and ate this book up whole. It is, again, a really reflective, slow-moving, meditative piece. It's no plot, just vibes, but it says so much. It's about a daughter reflecting on a trip to Japan with her mother, and it's sort of like unknown if her mother has died or if it's just a memory, and it talks a lot about aging, about grief, about loss, about memory, and I think it's a really powerful piece, and it uses language incredibly. Like, some of the lines in here will stay with me forever, and I flick through this book and it's so sad. This book is so sad, but in the best way. And I think if you are wanting to read something a little bit different and read more widely and be a little bit more chic, this book will be up your street, I hope. If I saw you holding this book, I would instantly want to talk to you. I want to be a friend. It's so chic. It's Miss Major Speaks, Conversations with a Black Trans Revolutionary by Toshio Murnak and Miss Major. If you don't know who Miss Major is, what are you doing? But Miss Major was very, very pivotal, one of the key factors in Stonewall and just like trans history in general. And I think this is a book everybody should read and try to understand. It's very, very easy to read. It's a conversation, and it is really, really fun in the way it reads. Because they're friends, they're having a conversation, but it does talk about a lot of really, really important things and has some beautiful, beautiful lines in it also. It's not just all fun, of course, and is full of sadness as well. I think part of being a chic reader and a well-read person is reading really widely and from a diverse pool of people and experiences, and I think this is a gap in a lot of people's knowledge, and so I can't recommend it highly enough. I love this book so much. I don't think I've stopped talking about this book since the start of the year. I read this in January, and it is just one of those books that I keep coming back to, I keep flipping through, I keep thinking about. It's The Lonely City by Olivia Laing. Olivia Laing is definitely in like my top 5 favorite writers, just in terms of everything they do. They're so incredible. If you haven't watched their house tour, oh my God, I aspire to have a house and a life like Olivia Laing. Olivia Laing thinks so deeply about so many things, about art, about gardening, about writing, and this book is no exception. In this book, Olivia talks about her experience with loneliness, about living alone in a city that's full of people and how you can feel so alone even though you're surrounded by people and movement all the time. And at the time I read this, I was going through a period of like crisis. I was like leaving my stable career, to try and like chase books, which is like crazy, and I just felt so lonely and like no one knew what I was going through. And I read this book in 2 sittings. It's quite long and it's very dense, and I remember finishing it in a bookshop cafe, and it was surrounded. The bookshop was so busy, but I felt so lonely, but I felt seen by the only person I felt seen by was Olivia Laing, and this uses art to sort of make sense of this phenomenon we call loneliness, about this like universal experience of human loneliness that we feel no one else goes through, and Olivia uses 4 artists in particular to sort of explore this concept of loneliness and what it means to be lonely and what it means to produce art as a way of coping with loneliness. And by the end of the book, we have this like intricate and woven masterpiece of all these artists in conversation with each other, in conversation with Laing, and then in conversations with us as well. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. It has the best final like 3 pages I've ever read in a book, and I've said that all year, and I think I'm going to stand by that for a really long time until something challenges it and says otherwise. And so I can't recommend it more highly. If I see you reading this book, I might kiss you. The books on these lists, now I'm looking at it, I actually read towards the end of 2023. There was such like a good few months of me just like being like my world being shook. It was like when I first came to BookTube and found a lot of like really influential booktubers here, like Sophie and Katie James and Benjamin Journal and Renee, like so many of these people, and Nathan, who just like really changed the trajectory of my reading and what I was interested in. And this is one of the books that I found during that period. It's A Horse at Night on Writing by Amina Kane. This is a book and a meditation on what it means to be a reader, what it means to be a writer, what it means to create art, and how we adapt that and attach it to our human experiences and how we move through the world. It's a really profound meditation on the intricacies around being a reader and how all of the things we take from books and writing sort of like translate into the bigger picture and how we move through the world. And you will leave this book with like a million more books you want to read. But I underlined more in this book than I think I ever have. Like, I think this is my most annotated book. There's just like line after line of banger after banger. And I think it's absolutely incredible. And the cover, again, this is one of my favorite covers of all time. I love it so much. You must read it. I promise you won't be disappointed. Too Much and Not the Mood by Durga Chowbose is a collection of essays that is incredibly impactful. I read this whilst I was traveling through Europe, and I bought a physical copy of it, which is unread. I read it on an e-reader, so I obviously don't have it underlined, but I'm sure if I did, there would be lots that I would be looking at and flipping through again. Collection of essays sort of build to this idea of what it means to be a first generation immigrant in America and what it means to be an artist and a woman today. And every single one of these essays just like hit. It feels like a slap in the face in the best way. I loved reading this. I thought Durga Chowbose has such an incredible way of using language and like rubbing up against some really intense but like important topics. And I think about this book a lot. If you don't know, Durga Chowbose actually has produced a film of Bonjour Tristesse by Francois Sagan, and I am so excited to see it. I haven't been able to get my hands on it here in Australia yet, but she is an incredible artist and really impactful. There's also a really great podcast where Lord interviews her at the New Zealand Writers Festival. They're very close friends, and so there's lots of media to consume around this book, and it's one I definitely want to read again. But if you read this, I promise people are going to think you're chic, think you're super hot, and you're just going to be better read. So read it. Would this be a chic book recommendation series if I didn't recommend a Rachel Cusk? I could have literally put any Rachel Cusk on this list, but I think if you haven't read Rachel Cusk, probably the best place to start is with the Outline trilogy. I guess that's most people's introduction to her work, and she is incredible. You can see this book is battered and tattered. It is not in good shape, but I love that. I think that's how all books should look. If you don't know what the Outline trilogy is about, and specifically this first book in particular, it follows our protagonist who we don't really know a lot about, and we don't hear her talk about herself, but we learn a lot about her through the conversation she shares on this trip away to Greece. We see her moving through a series of interactions and how she conducts herself and sort of like her inner monologue about these people, and it gives you a really good idea of how she sees the world trickle by trickle. And it's just like incredible. The way Rachel Cusk writes is unmatched. Like I love Rachel Cusk. I hope I get to all of her work, but I think I'm trying to savor it. I think I've read like 6 of her books so far, and I think this is probably my favorite, or this trilogy is my favorite, and I think about it a lot. So if you're looking for a book that's no plot, just vibes again, read this. You're going to be chic, you're going to be cool, and I'll love you a lot. Would this be a complete list without an Annie Ernaux? I love Annie Ernaux's work. I think with a lot of people here on the internet, she won a Nobel Prize for a reason. But this is the most recent book of hers I read, and it's The Use of Photography by her and Marc Marie. And it's incredible. This is a very different idea, and it has photographs in it, but it's a series, to give you like a little bit of context, it's a series of images that they took after they'd had sex, and then they both write an essay or a response to the image, and they explore like such a wide array of things, and it's incredible how powerful one image can be in such a raw and honest image with stuff that's been untouched. I think this is a really important read, and very experimental, very different, but so captivating. I loved reading this. I read it on the beach, and it was just so perfect, so I highly recommend it. For my final chic book recommendation, I want to recommend you How to Write an Autobiographical Novel by Alexander Chi. I love this cover. I think it's amazing. Like, why are we not putting more photo booths on the cover of books? I don't know why. Alexander Chee is a really important and prominent figure in queer literature and sort of like in this MFA circle of writers. This is a collection of essays, again, on what it means to use writing, reading, and politics and art all in your life, and how these sort of translate from the page and practice into how we carry ourselves in the world. Talks a lot about how reading fiction and writing has changed his life, and how when your truth is challenged and it forces you to make art, how influential that can be. It's a little bit more of a challenging read. It's definitely one you can't just pick up and move through. It's like, it requires your attention and focus, but again, so many beautiful lines and incredibly chic. It's not an exhaustive list. I think there's so many books that are incredibly chic, and I know I'm still yet to find so many, and I think that's the beauty of reading. But those are a few that when I think of chic, when I think of literature, I think of those. And so if you are wanting to just become better read, not for the performance of it, but just like to read more widely and deeply, I think that is like the crux of chic in reading and literature, then read these books, and I promise that you'll probably be a little bit better rounded and think more deeply about the world. And I guess that's all we can ask for. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for being here. I love YouTube. As we know, it's where my heart lies, and I think we're building a really beautiful community. If this is the first video you've watched, thank you for staying till the end, and if you keep returning, thank you even more. Don't forget to subscribe and comment. What are books you think are chic? I love having conversations and reading your comments. They always bring me so much joy. That being said, I'll speak to you soon. I'll speak to you next week, and that's that.